everyone! Welcome to Switchblade Sisters Social Club, the true crime podcast where two friends exploit their worst fears for your entertainment.
You're welcome.
I'm Dee, a writer and podcaster.
And I'm Isla from Criminally Good Books, a true crime and crime fiction bookshop in York.
Follow us on all the socials.
Except for X, obviously.
Or have a look at our website, switchbladesisterssocialclub.com.
Check them out for all our latest episodes, events, deals, and other weird stuff.
Listeners' discretion advised.
Hello, I'm Dee, and I would like to welcome you to an episode of Dee-Brief. So while we're on a season break between season 6 and 7, I will be releasing these shorter episodes every week on my own about different cases that fascinate me. So basically, I'm not having a break at all, but I can't leave you. Now, if you listen to our two-parter on the Black Dahlia last season with Steve Hodel, you'll already know why we're here, because Steve doesn't just believe his father, Dr. George Hodel, murdered Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia. He believes that his father was responsible for a whole series of murders, including one of Chicago's most infamous unsolved cases, the lipstick murders. So, let's get into it. We're going back to Chicago, 1945. The Second World War has just ended and America is celebrating. But Chicago is about to become gripped by fear. Over the next few months, 3 brutal murders would dominate newspaper headlines and create one of the most famous criminal nicknames in American history, the Lipstick Killer. I hate it. The first victim was 43-year-old Josephine Ross. On the 5th of June, 1945, neighbors became concerned when they hadn't seen her in a while. So police entered her apartment and they found that she'd been stabbed repeatedly. There was no obvious motive, no robbery, no sexual assault, and very few clues. 6 months later, 32-year-old Frances Brown was found murdered in her apartment. She had been stabbed, but she'd also been shot. Her body appeared to have been washed, and one detail overshadowed everything else. Written on the wall in lipstick were the words, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." And just like that, the newspapers had their headline, "The Lipstick Killer." Whether the killer actually wrote that message is surprisingly controversial. Some later writers have suggested it might have been altered or even written after journalists arrived at the scene. So there isn't enough evidence to prove that. It's just a theory, but it's also a theory that comes up with the Black Dahlia about why she was called that. Did journalists place the Dahlia on her to create a more sensational story headline? Less than a month later, so this is 7 months after the first killing, 1 month after the second, the city was horrified again. 6-year-old Suzanne Degnan disappeared from her bedroom overnight. A ransom note was left behind. Her parents received phone calls demanding money, but it was already too late. Suzanne had been murdered. Her body had been dismembered and parts were recovered from sewers and catch basins around Chicago. It became one of the biggest murder investigations America had ever seen. Hundreds of suspects were interviewed. Around 170 people reportedly took lie detector tests, and we all know how reliable they are. The FBI became involved, the press went into overdrive, and Chicago was terrified. And then, 6 months later, police arrest 17-year-old William Heirens, not for murder, but for burglary. Following his arrest, police claimed fingerprints connected him to the murders, and after days of interrogation, including the use of sodium pentothal, what people often call truth serum, he confessed and he pleaded guilty, and he received 3 life sentences. So case closed, right? Or was it? Almost immediately, people began questioning what had happened. Heirens later insisted his confession had been forced. He said he confessed because he believed otherwise he would face the death penalty. And critics have raised numerous concerns. Were the fingerprints reliable? Was the ransom note contaminated? Why did handwriting experts disagree so much? And perhaps most importantly, can you really rely on a confession of a frightened 17-year-old after days of intense interrogation? So to this day, some people believe that William Heirens was guilty, and others believe he became one of America's earliest famous false confessions. Officially, the murders remain solved. Historically, the debate has never really ended. So, what's this got to do with the Black Dahlia? Well, quite a lot, actually, depending on who you ask. Retired LAPD Detective Steve Hodel believes his father, Dr. George Hodel, committed the Black Dahlia murders. But he doesn't stop there. He argues that George, his father, was a serial killer operating across multiple states, including Chicago. Steve points to similarities between the cases, the apparent surgical precision, the post-mortem mutilation, the posing of bodies, the washing of the bodies, the taunting messages left for police, and what he believes are distinctive behavioral signatures. He also argues that his father's movements place him in Chicago at the relevant times. If true, it would make George Hodel responsible for both the Black Dahlia murder and the lipstick murders. So whether you believe William Heirens was guilty or whether the real killer escaped justice, we may now never know. What we do know is that the lipstick murders changed Chicago forever. Parents began locking doors that had previously been left open. The media discovered the power of sensational crime reporting. And the case became one of America's first true crime obsessions. Nearly 80 years later, people are still arguing about who really committed these murders. And perhaps that's why the case refuses to die. Thanks for listening to this debrief. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to follow, subscribe, leave a review, yada, yada, yada. It really does help us independent podcasts. And if you haven't already, go back and listen to our 2-part interview with Steve Hodel on the Black Dahlia. Whether you end up convinced or totally unconvinced, who knows, but it is one of the most fascinating conversations you will have with yourself in your own mind. See you next week. Bye. Bye, sexinessers. Love you. Bye.
Like this episode? Want more? Come visit me, Isla, at Criminally Good Books in the heart of York. We're an independent bookshop dedicated entirely to crime. From cosy mysteries to gritty thrillers, historical whodunits to juicy true crime. We've got signed editions, special gifts and plenty of recommendations for your next obsession. We also host a bunch of awesome author events. Can't make it in person? Visit us online at criminallygoodbooks.co.uk.